And now the final installment of the Pearl Harbor Conspiracy Theory, Part 4. December 7th is here, and the Japanese have attacked. Most Americans tend to believe that the Japanese on December 7th, 1941, attacked Pearl Harbor and only Pearl Harbor. If you are of that belief system, you would be mistaken. The Japanese had multiple targets that they were focusing in on December 7th. Pearl Harbor is just the one that gets the most notoriety and fame. In addition to hitting Pearl Harbor, the Japanese also attacked Wake Island, Midway Island, Guam, and the Corridor, and finally the southern islands off the tip of the state of Alaska. So the reality was that the Japanese were very, very busy on December 7th. They were all over the Pacific Ocean, literally. Part of the reason why the Japanese had such success was because of the fact that they attacked in two waves. So imagine coming to school in the morning and it's 7:53 a.m. and the attack has just begun right before school officially starts. The second wave arrives at 8:55, basically halfway through first period for sake of argument. And then finally, when the damage is completely done at Pearl Harbor, it's 9:55 as you are transitioning and getting into second period. The thing is that there's a problem with me talking about you being in school, or at least getting to school in first and then second period. The fact of the matter is on December 7th, 1941, it was actually Sunday morning. Now, when you couple this fact, the idea that the weekend is still in full swing, oh yeah, we're a neutral nation as well, and the idea that if you are a U.S. military personnel, and you've been doing your job and your higher ups have said, okay, you're going to get a weekend of rest and relaxation, um, where would you want to go? I mean, obviously, Pearl Harbor has got to be at the top of the list, if not the only top of any list for a U.S. serviceman to hang out for a weekend with some free time. So the idea that the Japanese are attacking as the weekend is wrapping up, with all of these servicemen sitting here hanging out, enjoying themselves for an entire weekend, was probably quite a rude awakening that Sunday morning. So yes, it could be argued that in fact the surprise was complete. The damage was quite extensive too. In just under 2 hours, the Japanese sunk or damaged 18 ships, 2,400 killed, and over 1,000 wounded. The next morning on December 8th, U.S. President FDR does his famous Pearl Harbor attack speech. Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by the naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. With the U.S. forces in the Pacific Ocean seriously crippled, damaged, sunk, killed, maimed, etc., crippled to say the least, the United States Navy had a lot of work to do to have to get themselves into a position to be able to take on the Japanese directly. Before moving forward, I would like to turn your attention back to this map here. This is the map of where the boats were positioned and the results of those boats after the attack of December 7th. You can see the well, I guess sunk is a word. It is for today. You can see the heavily damaged, you can see the moderately damaged, and then in black, you can see the undamaged. The big takeaway here I would like for you to understand, or at least think about, is the fact of the position of the boats before the attack. Notice how closely tight-packed all these boats are relative to one another. Now, Admiral Kimmel knows that an attack is imminent. He's been told this. He's been told that the attack will be the Japanese, it will be somewhere in the Pacific, but that's about it. Doesn't know where, doesn't know when, doesn't know exact time, exact forces, type, method of attack, etc. And that is important because remember, he's also been given intel of which when the Japanese attack, it will be either by air or by water through the Air Force and the Navy of the Imperial Armed Forces of Japan, but also sabotage is a potential possibility as well. Now, at this time, it was a fact that over half of the population that lived on the islands of Hawaii had Japanese ancestry. So, with this important fact in mind, I would argue that Admiral Kimmel's biggest concern was sabotage, based off the fact that over half of the population of Hawaii had Japanese ancestry flowing through their veins. So he was concerned about sabotage. Now, if that is your biggest concern, what you would probably most likely do is what Admiral Kimmel does. He takes the boats and he packs them all together. So that way you have a minimum amount of personnel to be able to watch the boats. And then if you keep them all together, it's going to be easier for you to see when a saboteur arrives and you can take them out quickly. This is the absolute polar opposite strategy you would take if you were concerned about an air or a water attack by the Japanese Imperial military. You would want to spread those boats out far and wide to make it very difficult for the machine guns and the Japanese Zeros and their torpedoes to hit their mark. So it's quite fascinating to me how all of this comes into play, and the worst of these strategies to take is the number one strategy Kimmel took. But once again, in defense of Admiral Kimmel, I get it. I get it. Based on the information that was given to him, or lack of information at this time. One more piece of evidence that I think you might find intriguing is backed up by these three photographs, documents that I have here as well. Photographs. In 1839, when photographs were seen for the very first time, they were greeted with a sense of wonder. However, this amazement was soon mixed with a tinge of disappointment. People didn't understand how a process that could record all aspects of a scene with such exquisite detail could fail so dismally to record its colors. The search immediately began for a means of capturing accurately not only the form, but also the colors of nature. With much trial and error, literally for 100 years, finally success. On April 15, 1935, the first Kodachrome film went on sale for use in 16mm cameras. American photographers had to wait until the following year before 35mm Kodachrome film was available. The point that I am trying to make here in regards to the color photography is that this technology is quite new. It's really been 6 years only, but the idea of the technology advancing as rapidly as, say, like for an iPhone, for example, well, that speed of rapid advancement, that was just not the case back during this time period. Remember, it took 100 years to turn a photograph from black and white into color availability. My point regarding that is the fact that since within this 6-year time frame, up till December 7th, 1941, cost, pricing, the idea of color film and taking color photographs from a price perspective is quite astronomical, relatively speaking, to taking black and white photographs. Why does that matter? Well, think about it for a minute. Here you are on Pearl Harbor, and I would argue that the majority of the individuals are probably down at the bottom. They're privates, they're corporals, they're sergeants in the U.S. Navy, or perhaps the other branches of the military. And with that being the fact, if the majority are down at the bottom, that would mean they would be at the bottom from a paycheck point of view. My point being is that this technology, this color photography, is quite expensive at this time, even though it's been out for several years. So the idea of an individual here at Pearl Harbor being able to afford this technology, to me, is very interesting. Okay, and so the point I'm trying to make here before moving forward is I find it quite amazing that the world's most advanced photograph and photography technology, the color photograph capabilities of all the places in the world, right here on December 7th at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, It just seems quite interesting that we have several documented bits of evidence of the most advanced and latest technology right here on display for all to see for all eternity. The Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, available in color. I think it would be an understatement to deny the follow the money motive. The objective, economically, to get to the oil and other natural resources down in the Dutch East Indies. Isoroku Yamamoto, remember him? He said that the U.S. fleet in the Pacific, and more specifically Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, was, quote, a dagger pointed at our throat, end quote. So with the petroleum, jet fuel, gasoline, and oil reserves basically running on empty at this point in time, the Japanese war machine is desperate. They have to chase the U.S. armed forces out of the Pacific so that the Japanese can continue their expansion of their empire. Here's a math word problem for you. How long does it take for a United States aircraft carrier to travel 2,615 miles from San Diego to Pearl Harbor? Well, assuming if FDR ordered the dispatch of the USS Saratoga on December 8th, it would have taken 5 days. Clearly too late. Thousands ultimately killed, as I've already explained earlier. Now, at the end of the day, FDR, really to this day in 2020, has never been officially accused of any wrongdoing. On the other hand, for General Short and particularly Admiral Kimmel, they were both relieved of command and blamed for the disaster. Then, finally, on May 25th of 1999, the United States Senate decided that change was needed, passing a resolution by a slim margin, 52 to 47, ultimately exonerating both Short and Kimmel. Too little, too late? Quite possibly, considering the fact that Kimmel died in May of 1968. However, for the grandkids and now great-grandkids of Admiral Kimmel, restoration is complete. 20 years after the restoration of Admiral Kimmel on September 10, 2019, the last Pearl Harbor veteran will be interred at the USS Arizona Memorial. That man was Lauren Bruner, who died in his sleep on September 10th. The guy was 98 years old. There were 43 other crew members that went in before him. He's the last one. 30 years ago, making the decision for his final resting burial place in the USS Arizona, literally. So what exactly does it mean to have Bruner's ashes interred literally in the USS Arizona? Well, this following video to wrap up this PowerPoint is a pretty good visual and historical explanation as to the how and the why and the logistics of it all.
Aloha, my name is Gary Jackson and I'm an interpretive park ranger here at the World War II Valor in the Pacific National Monument. This afternoon we're on board the USS Arizona Memorial. The names that are listed just fronting the memorial wall itself, dated from 1982 through 2010, are the names of survivors. Survivors that were fortunate enough to make it off the ship on the attack on the Arizona on December 7, 1941. These survivors went on to serve their country, and upon leaving the military, spent their lives and had families like we would normally do. And of course, upon passing, they have requested to be re-entered into the ship, allowing them to spend eternity with their shipmates that they left behind, serving still the Arizona to this day. Now, these individuals are first cremated, their ashes then placed in a very special watertight urn. For maximum privacy, we wait until the end of the workday, when the last tour has been completed. Only then do we reserve the Navy boat that brought us out here to bring the urn, family members, and a full honor guard here to the memorial. Once on the memorial, they'll set up and stage a detailed ceremony to honor that individual. Upon its completion, with taps played in the background, the urn is officially marched out to the lower dock. There it's turned over to our chief diver. The diver, upon accepting the urn, swims from the dock just beyond gun turret number 3 and continues to the 4th gun turret. It's this 4th gun turret, as you can probably imagine, that remains underwater 24/7. At the base of the number 4 gun turret is a 5.5-foot crevice. The individual will then slowly swim along this 5.5-foot area as they look for an opportunity to insert the entire urn, thereby returning them to their shipmates for all time. Out of the 33 internment services here aboard the USS Arizona Memorial, I've attended 2. Of those 2, I can say that they are very deep and profound. It's very much a military type ceremony honoring the individual, and it does bring tears to the eyes by the time it's completed.
Okay, that's it. That ends part 4 of a 4-part series of the Pearl Harbor conspiracy theory of the attack regarding the events surrounding December 7th, 1941. I hope you enjoyed it. Please feel free to send me some feedback as well. And that's a wrap. Talk to you later.